All right, so I might get started. I'll just keep adding people as they pop up to the webinar. But thank you for spending your Sunday learning about the cellulite, the dreaded cellulite, as we all like to think about it, and hormones. So I hope today just gives you a bit of enlightenment about how hormones work in your body and how they can contribute to body fat. But in particular, today the focus is going to be on cellulite. So a little bit about me to kickstart things. Just going to minimize this. I studied Biosignature. Now we're going back probably a good decade. I've been in the fitness industry for 20 years. Would you believe it? The time has flown, I can tell you that, and a lot has changed. And I guess I've been there since the evolution of the fitness industry, and I've seen a lot of, I guess, fads come and go. I've also been coaching people for that 20 years. So I feel like I've evolved myself in my own journey, but I feel like I've also evolved as a coach because I understand the challenges that can come up. And one of the things that I stumbled across a decade ago was Biosignature. So you guys that have been following me and implementing some of these principles into your own training and nutrition and lifestyle, is that it uncovers the correlation between body fat distribution and hormone imbalances. So these can cause stubborn areas of body fat. I've actually done a webinar similar to this, linking the hormones and belly fat. So this is going to be more about the lower half of the body. But in uncovering this, aesthetic, you also get to realize that hormones can be responsible for poor sleep, low energy, impaired brain function, and much, much more. So not only does it obviously help the aesthetic appearance of your physique, and it helps you to obviously stay fit, strong, and healthy, but you're also improving your quality of life. And I think people underestimate that as a real motive to continue on their journey, is to feel good, less stressed, feel strong. Particularly in my change of life where I'm now a new mum, I definitely feel like my strength, core strength, upper body strength, lower body strength, all really comes into play for my quality of life. So I think that's really important. Biosignature addresses a lot of these imbalances. And basically what we're going to go through today is how things like nutrition, training, supplementation, and lifestyle can actually help. So topics will uncover what is cellulite, what causes it, the hormones that can influence it, and in particular fat on the lower body because it's all connected, and then how do we combat it? So then what's the solution? How do we reduce that fat on our thighs, which in turn is going to help with that cellulite appearance? So this is a little diagram I pulled up, good old Google, and it's a lovely little diagram of that fat and what it looks like in the body. You've got fibrous cords that run down connecting the muscle to the skin. So basically what happens as fat cells accumulate, or as we have those stubborn areas of body fat in our lower half of our body, they push up against the skin, and because the cords are there, what it does is it creates this kind of dimpling appearance in the skin. So structurally, that's how cellulite works, or why it looks the way it does. Hormonal factors obviously play a large role, and we'll go through that, in particular the hormones estrogen and progesterone, which I'm going to go through. They can really dictate how much or how predispositioned we are to storing or having those stubborn areas of body fat on the lower half. So they're really important to look at. Just make sure there's no one else waiting to come in. No, I think that's all right. So genetics also determine skin structure and skin texture. So you've got in some cultures, some heritages, they don't have that fibrous cord sort of skin structure. So you'll find that even if they might be carrying extra body fat, they might not have as much of that dimply or cellulite appearance. Some studies can, suggest, and I've got some studies if you do want more on that, that weight training can alter skin structure, which we'll go through later, and it's all about growing that muscle underneath the fat and obviously reducing body fat. So those two things are going to help the appearance. Okay. So the hormone that really is responsible for that excess stubborn body fat is estrogen. So estrogen, what is it? It's secreted predominantly from the ovaries. It is the female sex hormone, so it does give us our female characteristics. It is vital, so it's not to say that estrogen's the big bad hormone, but in excess it can wreak havoc on not only the aesthetics of our body, but also, everything else, which I'll go through, estrogen dominance conditions. So excess estrogen or estrogen dominance, it can also be ingested from our environment. So how does that work? Well, anything from our environment can mimic the hormone estrogen. And when it absorbs into our bloodstream and it finds an estrogen receptor, it starts to produce more estrogen than what's needed for the body. So the lower body has more receptor sites, and therefore when excess estrogen is floating around your body, like a lock and key, it latches onto that receptor, and that's how you get that excess fat on the lower body. And of course, going back one slide, when I was going through the appearance or what makes that dimply appearance of cellulite, when the fat pushes against the skin, right, and you've got the cords that run vertically attaching the muscle to the skin, that's when we get more of that groove or dimpling on the skin. So if we reduce that fat, we get less of that push against the skin, and then we're going to see that reduction of cellulite. A lot of people believe in creams, massages, things like that. When you look at what happens and why the cellulite and the dimpling is there in the first place, then it makes so much sense. It's common sense to reduce that fat, and that's going to decrease that dimply appearance. How does it occur? Well, there's a few different things, and if you attended my belly fat webinar a few weeks back, you would have known a lot to do with, carbohydrates can increase things like love handles back fat. I've got the replay of that if you do want it sing out. You can email me afterwards. But it also, carbohydrates and sugar increases estrogen. Now, how does it do that? Well, what sugar does, it releases an enzyme called aromatase. And what that does is it converts testosterone to estrogen. So we have testosterone in our body as females. That helps us to build muscle. It helps actually to keep us lean. It's generally why men tend to be leaner than women and tend to build muscle faster than women, because, genetically, we got the short end of the stick in terms of testosterone. We do produce a bit of it, but we don't produce as much as men. But what sugar does is, as soon as that testosterone is secreted, rather than it being used to, build muscle, give us those, that fat ratio or muscle to fat ratio, give us that lean toned appearance, that's what testosterone helps to do in the body. It's actually converting to estrogen. So what this is doing is it's doubling up on this estrogen dominance issue. So too much refined carbs, sugars, is not a good thing if we want to control the aromatase enzyme. High exposure to toxins, these latch onto the estrogen receptors like a lock and key, which I mentioned before. I'm going to go through some of those toxins in a few slides from now, so you'll get a good understanding of what these toxins are you want to avoid. Poor phase 1 and 2 detoxification pathways. So how we detox estrogen is through the liver, kidney, and GI tract. So if there's something wrong, or we don't have a good functioning liver, kidneys, or we've got digestive issues, those things can hold up how we metabolize or detox estrogen, which increases the estrogen dominance. Low progesterone also causes an imbalance of estrogen progesterone. So it's like a seesaw. When one's up, the other's down. and one's down, the other's up. So we need to get them both working together so one's not elevated too high so the other comes back into balance. Generally speaking, it's low progesterone. I haven't come across many people that produce too much progesterone. People get a little bit confused when they start getting menopausal, perimenopausal symptoms or menopausal symptoms, because they'll come back and say, oh, well, my doctor said I had low estrogen, but it's not necessarily that you're producing too less estrogen, it's the balance of estrogen and progesterone. So it means that you're still dominant in estrogen, if that makes sense. I can elaborate on that further, but it's basically you're estrogen dominant rather than you've got high estrogen. So what we want to do is control estrogen. So we need to improve progesterone production, which will improve that dominance that I spoke about. Managing our blood sugar, which was a big topic in our reduced belly fat. So not only is it going to help belly fat, but it will also help the lower half of the body and also that appearance of cellulite. Limiting our exposure to toxins and also supplementation to improve detoxification pathways. So these are some of the symptoms that you may have if you're currently low progesterone and estrogen dominant. A lot of them, you might resonate with. I think at different times we all have a bit of these, and particularly when you get pregnant, things go pretty, out the window in terms of hormones. And you do get a lot of this stuff. But thankfully, when we understand how these hormones work in the body, we can naturally balance them where possible. Sometimes we can't avoid those swings in hormones, but we can avoid the severity of some of these symptoms that come with estrogen dominance. So I hope that's what you get out of today, is that, it doesn't mean that you can eradicate mood swings around PMS, or we can completely eliminate perimenopausal or menopausal symptoms, but we can decrease the severity and, some of those moods and things that come from having those hormone disruptions. A sluggish metabolism there, that's one that really comes about when we have extreme hormone imbalances. So it eventually ends up corrupting your thyroid, which then will, corrupt your ability to burn body fat. So you really want to get a handle of what to do and, how to move forward and try to eliminate estrogen dominance and increase your progesterone levels. So balancing progesterone, I don't like to tell people not to do something. I'm a bit of a rethink or take information away with you, and then you've got to find what works for you and your lifestyle. You've also got to make an informed decision based on doing your own research, and I'm a big believer in that, because there is a lot out there in the internet space. So you do need to obviously have a look at all of the pros and cons before making a decision. But I do know that contraceptive pill, which I got off years and years ago, I don't think I've had the contraceptive pill for maybe a decade. I think once I started Biosignature, I realised how, it really does screw up your hormones. It might fix some problems, but it eventually will cause havoc. So I stopped that. But yeah, I don't want to tell you to do that. That's your personal choice. I can just tell you the information around that. And HRT, which, look, I haven't been down that road, and I have talked to different people who have had very good success on HRT. But what I do know is that sometimes the HRT that's prescribed, it often doesn't take into account rebalancing with progesterone. The pill stops ovulation, so that can actually stop producing progesterone. And it can lead to that estrogen dominance that we spoke about before. Basically, with progesterone, there are some places that do a bioidentical progesterone cream. So if you're at a stage where you're going into perimenopause, it might even be that you've got really severe PMS symptoms, you know, things that you just know aren't right around your cycle, then a bioidentical progesterone cream, I don't sell anything like that, but I've done some reading on it, and it looks like it would be a really good alternative to HRT. Or the pill if you're trying to regulate your hormones and you're trying to regulate, you know, ovulation and things. Dr. John Ali, he's who I referenced a fair bit in some of my studies. He's got some great resources. You can just Google him. He's got his own website. He sells a bioidentical progesterone cream. Of course, deal with the doctor first before you make any decisions to you know, do a progesterone cream. I believe that it's very effective for people that are going into that perimenopausal, menopausal phase of their life. And there's been some fantastic testimonies on that. But have a look at his website and again, once again, make an informed decision. But they're just some key things to consider when trying to rebalance progesterone. And, you know, looking at it from a bit of a holistic approach, not just, you know, taking what your GP says for gospel. There's some great GPs now that are doing more holistic approaches, particularly that they've realised that estrogen dominance is quite a massive thing when it comes to things like menopause, you know, perimenopause. So there are more and more people doing more alternatives to contraceptive and HRT, which is fantastic. So managing blood sugar. In the belly fat one, I spoke about low insulin response carbs. In my nutrition plans, I've got a whole list of what they are. A quick example would be something like white rice as opposed to, say, cauliflower rice. The white rice would be much, much higher in insulin response. So if we're trying to think about ways to reduce our carbs and manage our blood sugar for estrogen, then choosing those low insulin response carbs would be very beneficial. Increase fats and proteins. So that's going to help your blood sugar as well. Often what I find is when people get that like 3 o'clock, they're feeling sluggish, they're looking for the carbohydrates. Often they might not have eaten enough in the morning. In particular, they haven't eaten enough low insulin response carbs, fats and proteins. So if you are that person that kind of likes to have a binge on sugar or binge on carbs in the afternoon, just get a lot of your calories in the mornings from fats and proteins. That should really help your satiety. It'll help set up the neurotransmitters in your brain. So leptin, ghrelin, those hormones that make you hungry and also make you full. It'll manage those better. So you're not looking for the carbs, but you're also managing the blood sugar so that you're not elevating that aromatase we talked about before and turning that testosterone into estrogen. So we want that testosterone to beneficially help us with building muscle, losing body fat. We don't want it to be converting to estrogen because as females, most of us have excess estrogen, which is why we've got, you know, cellulite and lower body fat in the first place. So we want to, where possible, try to manage our blood sugar. Meal frequency is obvious. We don't want our blood sugar to drop too much because that's obviously going to affect that aromatase enzyme. And adding lemon, lime and cinnamon will all help manage your blood sugar. So if you think of your blood sugar kind of like, not like a seesaw, kind of like, you know, I guess the stock market diagram. You've got your ups, you've got your downs, you've got your ups, you've got your downs. You want it to be in the middle. So you want it to be sustained over the whole day. That's ultimately what you want. The only time really you can benefit from having something high insulin response in carbs or getting that blood sugar spike might be straight after a high intensity session. We do mainly weights, but if you've had a big leg session and you're sweating, you might absorb the carbs better. That's one way or one, you know, a timing to have carbs if you're looking at doing that. And the other time, you know, would be on your refuel or your load days. So if you've been really, really good with your food for 5 days straight or 4 days straight, you might have 1 or 2 days where you're a little bit more relaxed. They work really well if you've been clean and you've had really low insulin response or moderate to lower carbs on those 3 to 4 clean eating days. So refuel days, load days, or up straight away after a big heavy duty leg session would be the only time I'd really go for higher insulin response carbs. Avoiding toxins. So you guys that have been using glycine, I keep forgetting to mention this, and I might mention it again in the hormone health group, is that if you soak your veggies in about half a teaspoon of glycine, you can see all this gunk come off your veggies. If they're not organic, they generally will have high pesticides on them. And it's pretty full on to see how much is actually in our vegetables. So if you're eating that every day, that builds up. Again, pesticides mimic estrogen, so they'll latch on to those receptor sites that are in your lower half. So where possible, avoid pesticides. Eating organic, obviously, is fantastic, but we can't always do that if the budget doesn't allow. It's just sometimes hard to get good organic produce. So soaking the fruit and veggies in glycine is a really good way, or just filtered water as well. Check your skin and hair products for chemicals that mimic estrogen. There's a really good app, and I've probably mentioned this if you've ever been to one of my book talks quite a bit. You can download it. I think it costs about $7, or it did when I downloaded it. And it's fantastic. It's updated every year. It's kind of like, remember those little calorie books you used to get years ago? It's kind of like the chemical version of that. So all you have to do is type in what the chemical is. Usually they're like 20 letters long, and we can't understand what they're saying. But you've got food and makeup, and so you might type in, say, 995 as you might type in the number if it's on your ingredients list, and it'll tell you if it's good or bad. 995, by the way, is artificial sweetener, so you don't want that because that holds up liver. So 995, that's just one example. If you're holding up liver, it's not going to detox estrogen well. So that's all your aspartame, is that how I pronounce it? Your equal sugar and things like that. It's pretty much anything that goes from your skin. It takes about 30 seconds to absorb into your bloodstream and start to mimic estrogen. So have a think about anything you breathe in that has skin contact. Cleaning products, there are some good non-toxic versions that are still performance-based. I've recommended Modere over the years. They're really good. In your supermarkets now, there's a lot more non-toxic products that you can use now than what there was, a long time ago. So look, it's a switch out that's not that much more expensive. Even some of the washing powders I've bought last longer. The Modere one I know is very goes a long way, so you might spend a few more bucks on it, but you don't have to use as much. So non-toxic products where possible will be really, really beneficial for just getting a handle on estrogen mimickers. And look, this is a long-term thing. I don't think that just cutting out all of your chemicals is going to just make your fat melt away on your lower body overnight, but certainly it's a build-up of everything. So it's if you find something just as good and it's non-toxic, it's a pretty good switch out, and it's going to help not only your your health and fitness journey and the fat on your lower half eventually decrease, but it's good for, again, your quality of life. So it reduces your risk of cancer and other health issues. So there's a lot of people that are post breast surgery, and the first thing they get them to do is switch out their toxic personal care products with non-toxic. So this stuff is not just for the aesthetics, but it's really good for your health. Plastics in general, PBA free. Now I think there's other plastics that are even in PBA free that they're saying aren't as good, but I'm yet to see more research on that. But PBA free definitely, and I think most plastics now are PBA free, which is good. If in doubt, get that Chemical Maze app and download it and use it as much as you can, because it's a really good tool. So the supplementation now, you can improve detoxification by sweating. When you sweat, you detox. When you sleep, you detox too. So improved sleep will actually help that detoxification process. Staying hydrated and increasing your water intake is going to help with detoxification as well. So all of those natural things, definitely continue to do those. If you're doing all of that and you're feeling like you're on track with your food and your training, then we look at supplementation. So methylated B vitamins, not all multivitamins are created equal. So we definitely want something that's methylated, which helps absorb faster into the bloodstream. That helps your estrogen metabolism, in particular phase 1. So with metabolizing estrogen or detoxing estrogen, if you have estrogen dominance issues, first of all, your body gets the excess estrogen and starts processing it through your liver and kidneys. The analogy that often I've used in the past, it's like the garbage truck man. He comes and collects your garbage from your front yard. So that's like phase 1. And then what happens is it goes from phase 1, which is your liver and kidneys, into your GI tract. So this is where you need things to support your digestion, and that assists with phase 2, which is the way that estrogen gets out of your body. So that's the garbage man taking the garbage to the dump, basically. Now you poo these out, so you basically need it to go from the liver and kidneys to your GI tract, and then you poo out the estrogen. Sounds a bit crass, but yeah, that's what happens, and that's how we get rid of a lot of the estrogen. Besides sweating as well, there's other things, but with multivitamins, you want something that helps with phase 1 and 2. So the HCI, which I've talked about before in the Poliquin multi that a lot of you are already using, this really helps with that phase 2. So it's a multivitamin that's really fueled not only for general health and wellness, but also that improving detoxification pathways. Pure form amino acids. Amino acids naturally detoxify the body as well, so they're always a good thing to include. We get them from whole food, so protein specifically. There's plant-based proteins, there's animal proteins. I'm a big fan of animal proteins. If you're not an animal protein person, then there are some good quality plant-based proteins as well, and I've got a list of those if you need those. But leucine really helps the blood sugar. We've spoke about that before. It also helps with muscle development and recovery. So it's a really, really good pure form amino acid that I always recommend. I've started taking, because I had to be careful with breastfeeding, so I've just started taking some of those now, and oh my gosh, the difference in how I feel with being able to just go that little bit extra with my training sessions has been awesome. So obviously if we can deliver, or we can train, at that just that little bit more intensity, it makes all the difference for our results. So anything that helps assist that is great. L-glycine is a really powerful liver detoxifier. So you want to have glycine during the day. It has a calming effect on the brain. So often I find if you have it later in the day, that can really help. And it helps with that, phase 1, again, detoxification of estrogen. Very beneficial for estrogen dominance. I remember when I used to do a pre-comp back in the day, my bodybuilding days. I forgot to mention that in my initial spiel. It was a really good way just to clean out the body before I started on like a transformation program. So if you haven't already looked into glycine, look into it. I order things from the States every couple of weeks. I've got a new order this week. So if you are looking for something, the next slide here, you can just jot down my email, or you can DM me on Facebook. I work through Facebook Messenger pretty instantly. So if there's something that you want, let me know and I can order that for you. But those 3 products I tend to sell in a 3-pack. There are other things if you want to go that little bit more, but I think that's a really good starter pack. There's products like DIM, cow D-glutarate. They both help with specific estrogen if you've tried these products and you feel like you want to take it next level. But again, just DM me, I can give you some more information. But these 3 would be a really good starting point for anyone that's not sure where to start with their supplementation. So training for improving cellulite or skin structure. So once again, you know, genetics do play a role, but I do know that from doing resistance training for the last decade, you can really reduce that appearance of cellulite. And having less body fat, obviously that's a given. That's a pretty, you know, sort of common sense way of thinking about how cellulite works. As I said before, the more body fat we have pushes out against the skin, creates that dimpling appearance. So our first point of call is always to try to reduce the body fat. But then some studies say that if you improve your muscle density, it can actually help evenly compress the fat and fibrous cord, smoothing the surface of the skin. So the bumps and dimples can minimize. So once again, I say this and I'm starting to have a joke about it now. There's so many incentives to lift weights regularly. I do 3 to 4 strength training sessions a week. That works for me with Bubba, and that's about all I can manage. 20 to 45-minute sessions, and increasing obviously in intensity as you go. So you don't want to start at like an advanced weightlifting program straight away. You just want to build it up slowly. Split up the body parts for the best results, and also perform compound exercises predominantly. So that's like a squat versus like a leg extension, for example. So yeah, so that's just a really short way, or short sort of summary of why we should do strength training to help improve cellulite. And I know, again, you know, it's a generational thing. My mum didn't grow up with weight training. You know, this whole clean eating movement and hormones and everything really has come about for me in the last decade, for sure. Like prior to that, I was an 80s child, didn't see much of this around. You had your aerobics, which was kind of a combination of strength training and HIIT training, I guess. HIIT training, if you're not aware, is like high intensity, sort of more cardio, jumping around, things like that. So what I've found over the years is that resistance training is more sustainable, so you don't get injured as much. But also I've found that, you know, I don't have as much of the cellulite now. I'm not completely, you know, I do have some, believe me, and particularly after I've had a baby, I notice more because you get those fluctuations in estrogen. However, I feel as though since I have been weight training consistently for, well, nearly going on 2 decades, I do really feel like that has reduced the likelihood of me getting it severely as I get older. So I think it's a great preventative. It'll help reduce the appearance, but it's good to look at it as a preventative. And, you know, I look at the genetics in my family and I think, well, you know, I think if my mum knew more about the strength training, then she could have started at an early age, and then maybe, you know, she would have less cellulite. I don't know. It's hard to say, but I do know that the earlier you start and the more that you can start doing strength training, you don't have to necessarily be a victim of your genetics and blame your genetics for everything. You can take control and go, well, you know, I'm going to have muscles when I'm, you know, 70, 80, and I'm going to have a bum. I'm not going to have a pancake bum. But you can create that reality for yourself by just deciding to do strength training regularly, and you'll never regret it. Believe me, I've been doing it for a long time. I love it. I love my strength training. So if you need help, you don't know where to start, this is where my Muscle Mama programs come in. I know a lot of you have already done some of my programs. You might be currently doing programming. I do offer weekly coaching calls. So this is something new that I've only done the last probably nearly 9 months. So that's been really good for people that just need that bit of extra accountability, and just it's always good for someone to explain things verbally rather than just have a PDF. So these are the phases: phase 1, 2, and 3. Phase 1 for beginners, 2 for those wanting to step up, and phase 3 is for the advanced trainer. I started on phase 1 back in January when I was postpartum and feeling really weak, and it was very doable. I lost my confidence with my training just because everything goes out the window, as you know, if you've had babies. So it was a really good starting point. So if you're at that point or you just haven't done anything for a while, I'd definitely go with phase 1. Again, the coaching calls make it more individualized. You get more personalized nutrition advice. So the PDF you get has your exercises, has your ideal nutrition plan, but the problem is it's not really specific to you. So that's why the calls are really good. Individual hormonal imbalances. So if there's an area you really want to tackle or you feel like a lot of this stuff has resonated, we can go one step further and try to develop something that's specific to you. And once again, make it a bit more personalised. So that's what the weekly coaching calls, and obviously the accountability. So you're checking in with me on a weekly basis for 4 weeks. Some of the results, you can see that definitely towards this side, I've got my mouse here, you know, you can see that it's a bit hard with the light, but you can see that sort of dimply appearance has definitely subsided in a lot of these transformations as well. But yeah, look, you've only got to put it into action and take photos, you know, see your own progress. It's really motivating when you find something that's sustainable that you enjoy doing and you're getting results. You don't need to get results overnight, but if you keep chipping away at some of these principles we've spoken about today, yeah, you'll be on the right track. So this is a little special. I actually changed this to 25% off. So just disregard that. It's 25% off. You just have to go to musclemama.com, new products, and you can get that for 25% off, which brings the price down to $67.45, which is really affordable, particularly because you're getting a weekly coaching call. And, you know, I love it. I mean, sometimes you've got to listen to Isabella having a little whinge in the background, not always. But I love doing the coaching calls. I just think that that's a really good service for people that just don't know where to start. If you're not quite ready to make that jump, then I would definitely stay connected in some of my private Facebook group communities. I try to post on there a few times a week just to keep people encouraged. So I've got your Balance Your Hormones, Shred Fat for Life. And then you've got your Muscle Mama community. So that's it from me today. I hope you enjoyed everything. I've actually just got less than a minute. I think it's going to finish up on me. If you've got any questions, I'd love to answer them. Just give me an email at hello@themusclemama.com.au and I'll answer any of your questions that you have. And yeah, I hope you decide to do the 4-week coaching program because it'd be great to have you on board. And I'm doing a supplement order this week. So get your orders in if there's anything that you want to try out. Thanks, guys. Have a great Sunday night. I'll see you again soon. I'll do another webinar soon. See you later.